Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 450 of the Cosmic Illusion, beginning with the last sentence on the paragraph.
So, it's been quite some time. So I will read out the summary of the last para so that we get the sense of continuity.
Good.
Okay, so in the previous para he has said, the mind of man observes and uses actualities. It also receives truths not yet actualized in the universe. It deals in possibilities and mediates between truths and actualities, the future, potential, and the present fact. Being limited in knowledge, it supplements it with imagination and discovery. The Supreme Consciousness manifests the truth. The human mental consciousness has to discover the truth. Mind seizes possibilities of the infinite not as forms of truth, but only as its own figment constructions, products of its own imagination. Mind has no omnipotence or omniscience as of the Supreme. It can realize objective only what nature allows. Nature allows and permits only that which is immediately possible under present world conditions. Mind's limited knowledge, results in incompleteness, error, and ignorance. This is what he said in the previous para. So now we continue from where we left off last time. Our mind works best and with a firm confidence when it is given a substance to work on, or at least to use as a basis for its operations, or when it can handle a cosmic force of which it has acquired the knowledge. It is sure of its steps when it has to deal with actualities. This rule of dealing with objectivized or discovered actualities and proceeding from them for creation is the reason for the enormous success of physical science. But here there is evidently no creation of illusions, no creation of non-existence in vacuo, and turning them into apparent actualities such as is attributed to the cosmic illusion. For mind can only create out of substance what is possible to the substance. It can only do with the force of nature what is in accordance with her realizable energies. It can only invent or discover what is already contained in the truth and potentiality of nature. On the other side, it receives inspirations for creation from within itself or from above. But these can only take form if they are truths or potentials, not by the mind's own right of invention. For if the mind erects what is neither true nor potential, that cannot be created, cannot become actual in nature. Maya, on the contrary, if it creates on the basis of the reality, yet erects a superstructure which has nothing to do with the reality, is not true or potential in it. If it creates out of the substance of the reality, it makes out of it things that are not possible to it or in accordance with it. For it creates forms and reality, and the reality is supposed to be formless, incapable of form. It creates determinations, and the reality is supposed to be absolutely indeterminable. He
Very
has given
complex.
us.
Very complex.
Yeah, it's complex, no doubt about it. So, we'll have to, because when we read Sriramdo, we have to see what he has said earlier, and then we have to link. If that link is lost, it's a little difficult. So, what we'll
I
do...
find that's the same in Savitri. We always have to go back
Yes,
to find the complete
yes,
thing from
that's
the
right.
links.
yes, absolutely. Because very often he starts saying something, and then he has used the words it. And now what is this it representing? You have to sometimes go back to nearly 1.5 pages, 2 pages. Then it makes sense. So that's exactly what you're saying is absolutely right. That's why they say that Sriramdo doesn't write sentence by sentence, nor does he write paragraph by paragraph. He writes chapter by chapter. So this is what is meant, what we are discussing is exactly that.
Yes.
So what he has said in 5th chapter, he takes up again in the 10th chapter. So you must remember what he has said there. So anyway, it's complicated. So it's complicated because of the breaks we have. So I'll do one thing. I'll read out the summary of what he's saying here.
Ah,
Okay. So that will simplify the thing. Okay. In this paragraph we read just now, he is saying the human mind works best when it is given a substance to work with, or it can deal with a cosmic force of which it has some knowledge. Now, let's understand what he's saying. The human mind works best when it is given a substance to work with. So, if I have to make a computer, I need plastic and I need metal, and I have to work with it. So it's easy for him to work with something solid. But also a cosmic force. For instance, he has discovered the truth of radio waves, for instance. Or he can apply that to the phone and get mobile done. So this is what he is saying, that once he has known something, he can work with something known. But with something unknown, it's very difficult for him to learn. Okay? So, this is the reason. So what he is saying, it can deal with a cosmic force of which it has some knowledge. This is the reason for the tremendous success of science. But when the scientific mind is creating, it can create only from a given substance, and the potentiality is inherent in the substance. It cannot create anything that is already not inherent in it. It will create only that which nature or the world conditions will allow it to create.
interesting.
It can't create something which is on which he has no grasp. The mind can't.
The mind can't. Yes.
Can't. But the divine Maya can. It can create things which don't exist for us. That's what he's saying. You get the point? So, I can create. The mind is a creator. The mind is a creator. It has created the computer. It has created the mobile. But what is the material it is using? It is using a material which is existing in the physical world already.
Yes.
Whereas Maya is creating something which doesn't exist for us. The divine is creating, there is no substance with which to create. So he is creating something which is unknown to us. Maya has that capacity, but we don't have that capacity. We can only use a material, we can create something with material which I have with me.
So the form coming out of the formless?
Yes, that is what Maya can do.
Yes.
But we can't do that.
We can't do that, no.
We can do only, we can create forms out of other forms.
Yes, got it.
That's what he's saying. Okay, so. But in the Mayavada theory, we have an absolute reality, totally featureless and indeterminable, which by the power of its Maya is creating absolute unrealities or illusions which are not to be found in the parent reality. This is what he's saying. So,
We have an example of that?
yeah, the example is exactly this, that when I go to the spiritual plane of consciousness by silencing my mind, I am seeing an illusion. Because it's at a lower level. The mind can do that. But this illusion is not the right way of looking at things, because the divine can create things, it can't create illusions. The divine being absolute reality does not create illusions. We are in our limited capacity seeing the illusion. So what we are seeing cannot be really an illusion. It can't be an illusion.
Yes, it has to be some materialization.
Our instruments of knowledge, our instruments are inadequate. So that's why we are seeing something wrong.
Yes.
It's a mistake. It's like your calculator is giving you an error. So the calculator is limited. So it's giving you an error because there is a malfunctioning. So the malfunctioning of our mind is giving the illusion. That's what he's saying. Because the Maya, the divine creating forms, cannot create an illusion. It can create only realities.
But the divine could create unreality if it wishes.
It cannot create an unreality. It will not. Because it's only...
The divine?
The divine is real, and the material he is using is real, and therefore he can create only realities. Okay, so that's what is being said. Okay. So this is in short what he is saying. If you want to go sentence, it will be pretty complicated. So today we'll just do it this way.
Okay.
Okay. So I read the para and then I'll read the summary.
All right.
Okay, so now, Srimda is saying, but our mind has the faculty of imagination, whereas the Maya is creating the world out of a substance which is absolute reality, Sat Chit Ananda. So it will not create illusions, but we are creating because our power of creating is limited and we can make mistakes and errors. That's why we are saying illusion. That's what he's saying.
But when Sri Aurobindo says that in the mind of man, nothing is impossible.
If it goes out of its limitation, then goes to the outside itself.
Right.
If it remains entrenched in its present condition, it will make mistakes. That's right. I wouldn't say exactly in the mind of man, nothing is impossible. I would say in the consciousness of man. Because consciousness at the mental level is limited.
Okay.
But the consciousness, when it goes out of mind into higher levels of consciousness, it can do anything. The power to do anything is in the consciousness, not in the mind, as we understand it. Mind is only one level in which consciousness, universal consciousness, is adjusting itself to that level.
Okay.
I am reading the next para. But our mind has the faculty of imagination. So, it can create and take as true and real its own mental structures. Here, it might be thought is something analogous to the action of Maya. Our mental imagination is an instrument of ignorance. It is a resort or device or refuge of a limited capacity of knowledge, a limited capacity of effective action. Mind supplements these deficiencies by its power of imagination. It uses it to extract from things obvious and visible things that are not obvious and visible. It undertakes to create its own figures of the possible and the impossible. It erects illusory actuals and draws figures of a conjectured or constructed truth of things that are not true to our outer experience. That is at least the appearance of its operation. This is very clear when you think of science. Science is going on creating theories, which it is likely to change next day. Okay, that's what Simon is pointing out. But in reality, it is the mind's way or one of its ways of summoning out of being its infinite possibilities, even of discovering or capturing the unknown possibilities of the infinite. But because it cannot do this with knowledge, it makes experimental constructions of truth and possibility and a yet unrealized actuality. As its power of receiving inspirations of truth is limited, it imagines, hypothesizes, questions whether this or that may not be truths. As its force to summon real potentials is narrow and restricted, it erects possibilities which it hopes to actualize or wishes it could actualize. As its power to actualize is cramped and confined by the material world's oppositions, it figures subjective actualizations to satisfy its will of creation and delight of self-presentation. But it is to be noted that through the imagination, it does receive a figure of truth, does summon possibilities which are afterwards realized, does often, by its imagination, exercise an effective pressure on the world's actualities. Imaginations that persist in the human mind, like the idea of travel in the air, end often by self-fulfillment. Individual thought formations can actualize themselves if there is sufficient strength in the formation or in the mind that forms it. Imaginations can create their own potentiality, especially if they are supported in the collective mind, and may, in the long run, draw on them the sanction of the cosmic will. In fact, all imaginations represent possibilities. Some are able one day to actualize in some form, perhaps a very different form of actuality. More are condemned to sterility because they do not enter into the figure or scheme of the present creation, do not come within the permitted potentiality of the individual, or do not accord with the collective and the generic principle, or are alien to the nature or destiny of the containing world existence. Pretty complex again.
Yes.
But we will do one thing. We will read the summary, and then, because then we simplify it. Okay, let's see what we can do.
Okay.
And if necessary, we'll explain the summary also, if necessary. Now, first he has told us in the previous para that the mind can create only with something that is already existing for him. The mind cannot create something which is not existing. It has to use material which is existing. This is very clear. On the other hand, Maya has the power to create something on its own will, because it is taking the Sat, which is the subtlest of substance, and creating whatever it wants. That power we don't have. We can only create something with a material that is already available to us. Okay. But the human mind has the power of imagination. And what does imagination do? He is discussing now. Imagination creates and takes as real its own mental constructions. Okay? This could be construed as a power very similar to Maya. Okay? Imagination is a power of the ignorance. It has a limited capacity for knowledge. It supplements this deficiency by imagination. It extends and extrapolates from real, obvious and visible things not visible or obvious. Now this is exactly the basis of theoretical physics. Theoretical physics corresponds exactly to what Srimdu is saying. You have certain things which you have understood, but now in theory you are extending your imagination and seeing what are the possibilities. That's exactly what Srimdu is saying. Okay? Theoretical physics is that which can be in future. And then you can build again your own structures on that. So many physicists have one Nobel Prize for theoretical physics, not
Yes.
something which they have achieved in the physical world.
Ah.
Yeah. One of them was our Chandrasekhar. He got Nobel Prize for theoretical physics.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, it supplements this deficiency by imagination. The mind of man has got a limited capacity for knowledge. So, limited capacity, it supplements by this deficiency by imagination. It extends and extrapolates from real, obvious and visible things, things not visible or obvious. That is at least what it seems to be. But actually, it's a summoning up from the field of unrealized actualities.
Hmm.
So what Shabda is saying is, your imagination can't think of something which doesn't exist. So it exists in a subtle manner and you are deriving from there. That's what he's saying. The mind cannot think of something which does not exist. It can deal with only something that exists. So, suppose I say that I think of a flying tiger or a mermaid. It doesn't exist. But the mermaid, the man exists and the fish exists. The tiger exists and flying exists. I am only combining things which exist already. That's what he's pointing out. Okay, so this at least is what it seems to be. But actually, it's a summoning up from the field of unrealized actuality. There you are, okay? So, unrealized actualities. The human mind,
So the actuality is that.
actuality is something that already exists.
What about a chimera?
Pardon?
A chimera.
Is a possibility. It's not an actuality.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
It could be. But now, could that could be become a reality? He has discussed later in the para.
Okay.
Okay. So but actually, it's a summoning up from the field of unrealized actualities. There are subtle actualities which don't exist in the physical world, and you are only deriving from there what the possibilities are.
Does one have to rise to the next level
Yes, that's right.
to do that?
Or imagination. Imagination you can do here. When you rise to the next level, the capacities are there, you can use them. But when you have not risen to the other level, you have to use imagination. And imagination, you are thinking of possibilities which could exist beyond the actualities here. Okay? Now he will tell you, when can those imaginations become real? What are the conditions under what it is possible? That's what he's going to tell you. But actually, it's a summoning up from the field of unrealized actualities. Note that. The actualities exist in subtle form and you are deriving from there. Okay? The human mind imagines, hypothesizes, questions whether its constructions could be real or not. So what it does imagine, what it wishes to create, are figures of truth and tend to become real, as in the case of aerial travel. 400 years earlier, Leonardo da Vinci had already thought of flying machines, but they were not real. So it is in the field of unrealized actuality. Now that became it became a reality. But will all unrealized actualities become real? That depends on the world conditions. For instance, it's very easy to understand this. 200 years ago, I thought of flying to the moon. Imagination. I can fly to the moon. You are deriving this from the unrealized actuality. It is there possible. Now, which possibility of the unrealized actuality can become real in the physical world? Will the world conditions allow it? That's the whole question.
It's interesting that science fiction writers
Yes, that's right.
often catch something of
That's
this.
right. The science fiction is exactly this. You are using unrealized actualities and making a construction in the mind. Now the question is, will all unrealized actualities which you imagine, can they become real? They can become real if the world conditions allow it. For instance, The idea of travel 400 years earlier, the world did not allow it. Why? Because you did not know the laws of the aerodynamics you did not know, nor did you have materials which are light like plastic and aluminium. You didn't have. So the world did not allow those conditions. But the moment the world allows these conditions, those unrealized actualities can become realities.
Fantastic.
This is what Swami is saying. And it's very clear.
Very clear.
Okay? So this is very interesting. Mind's imaginations may manifest as real if the world conditions permit it. So we gave an example just now. What are the world conditions for the aerial travel? We did not know the laws of aerodynamics. Now we know. Then we did not also know the materials which did not exist. Now we have plastic, which is light but strong. Aluminium was also not discovered at that time. Now it is discovered. So this is how the world conditions allow it. Okay. The same applies to the supermind. Okay. Now the supermind, is the world going to allow it? Srendo is foreseeing that the world will conditions will allow it, and he has actually brought it down and kept. It is unrealized as yet, but it is a unrealized activity today, actuality today, but tomorrow it will become an actual reality. That's what he's saying. The world conditions have to allow it. Take mother's change of body. Okay? She did her best to do it, and she went to a great extent. But the world conditions are not allowing it. So it had to stop. Now we have to wait until the world conditions allow it. That's what is being said. Okay? So
Yeah.
mind's imagination may manifest as real if the world conditions permit it. But most of such imagined self-constructions are condemned to temporary oblivion. So, temporary oblivion.
Temporary.
Yeah. Now it can't be done, maybe tomorrow it can be done. Okay, so only what nature allows can become real, actual. This is what he's saying in the para. So one can understand what he's saying. Okay. So here we stop today.